Hello. This week I'm going to talk to you about desires and the cost of ignoring your desires, why you should listen to that niggle inside, and what gifts that can bring you if you do, even though it often doesn't make sense. So, my name's Joanne Phoenix, and I radically changed my life. I used to live a very conventional life. I absolutely loved it. I was very fortunate in that the jobs that I've done, I really enjoyed. But then one day I started to get this niggle, and I really didn't know what was going on with me at the time. So if you resonate with that, then I hear you. For me, I was 49 years old at the time. 8 years ago, I found that I couldn't function in my job the same way as I used to. I was finding it difficult to bring myself to do tasks that I'd been doing for 13 years, I'd say, at that point. And I really couldn't understand what was happening, but what I knew was that deep inside, I knew something was calling me. I knew that there was something different for me, and it was pretty disorientating. You might recognize this. What's wrong with me? I've got a beautiful life. I had a 5-bedroom house. My salary was 6 figures. I had 2 great children, still have, but they were growing up, and I couldn't somehow get myself to be as happy or as enthusiastic as I used to be. And then I had this really, really bizarre experience. Well, it was bizarre at the time. I don't find it so bizarre now. I was with my then husband. We'd been together for 25 years, and we were in our dining room. We were entertaining another couple for the weekend. They were 10 years older than us. One of them was his cousin. And as the weekend went on, I could see that we were headed in exactly the same direction as them, and there was nothing wrong with them. The life they were living, what they were doing, all quite normal. But my heart was sinking, and I couldn't really understand what was happening. And then that particular weekend, my then husband made steak, and he brought it into the dining room for us, and everybody was chatting and saying, "Oh my God, that's the perfect steak. It looks wonderful." And it did. And I had this bizarre feeling and thing that happened. It was as if someone was stood behind me and they were talking to me. And they said, "Hey, Joanne, what are you doing? Whose life are you living? You're like some kind of extra on somebody else's movie set." And I was sat there, I was still chatting, I was still entertaining, but all this was going on inside of me. And I knew for a fact that my life was going to change from that moment on. And it did. Fast forward 8 years and my life is very, very different. I did follow the call inside of me, and I went on many, many adventures. I actually ended up, my husband and I at the time went separate ways. It was amicable. We didn't have some big fallout. I left a job that I'd been in for 15 years. I left that dream home that I loved. I went off on quite the adventure. You could say it was a mixture of Eat, Pray, Love, Shirley Valentine, and Thelma and Louise somehow, and some Bridget Jones put in there. But what I will say is it's been the most fulfilling thing that I could have done at this time in my life. It's not been easy, but I feel so much more calm, relaxed, and happy than I was at that moment in my life, and it was worth it. So why should we follow that niggle? Well, it's my belief that when something's calling us, it's there for a reason. Desire is there for a reason. And certainly in my entrepreneurial journey, what I've discovered is that evolution is tension. It's going after something that you desire, and you have to grow into that desire to get to where it is that is calling you, that dream, that niggle. You're going to have to change. And I think that's why most people ignore it. I think that's why people settle and maybe prefer to listen to what the rest of society does. To give you an example, as part of this process, maybe about 2 years into it, maybe a little bit longer, I ended up going to Mexico for 6 months. I sold everything and I came back and decided to have another go at the working world. And when I came back and decided to have another go, I met with an ex-colleague of mine, and the first thing he said to me was, well, that's me and my wife now. We're going to move to a bungalow and we've got this much in our pensions and we're going to do this, that and the other. And I could see the total sense in it. I've got friends now who that's what they're doing, and they're happy and they're going on holidays and they're doing the normal societal thing. But I remember thinking at the time, I can't do this. This is not for me. That's not what I'm being called to do. But again, like I said before, it can be quite disorientating, because if that's not what everybody else is doing, but you know somewhere deep inside that there's something else for you, there doesn't seem to be many reference points. It doesn't seem to be the norm. So if that's happening with you, then I can tell you I really understand. So why do it? Well, from the people that I coach and mentor and I've come across that don't answer that calling, what I've noticed is that life does it to them anyway. You'll have heard the stories, I'm sure, of a version of what I'm about to say, such as someone saying that their husband had an affair, their wife had an affair, they were devastated at the time, but when they look back, they'd done them a favour. Or they'd lost a job that was a really great job and they'd been made redundant and it was devastating for them again, but when they look back, it did them a favour because it forced them along a path. And what I've come to understand is that it's all energy, and if we're not following that call, that deep knowing inside of us, or that niggle, then it's going to happen anyway, one way or another. Life is going to find a way of getting you to change. It could be that you're like me, that you're in a marriage, you have been with somebody, you love them, and you can't understand why you're not happy. I mean, I still loved my now ex-husband at the time. It could be that you're in a job and you've been really successful at that job. It pays you really well. Maybe you've got commitments, mortgages, various different things, and you're not enjoying that job at all, just like I was, and you just don't feel satisfied. And maybe you're counting the days to your retirement or your next vacation or holiday or whatever it is. I would say at least take the time to take some quiet time to yourself, journal around it, inquire, what's this thing that's going on inside of me? Another thing that I come across is I have clients who say to me, I don't know what my dream is. I don't know what I want. Well, then I would say start with what you don't want. Start right there, and soon when you trace it back, you'll find out what you do want. probably the opposite. Or here's something that I do a lot, and I actually have a process that helps me with this, and I do this time and time again. It's the thing I developed for solving problems. So to explain it to you, if I've got a problem in my life and I'm not enjoying it, one of my most recent problems was that there was some things wrong with my car, and it seemed like an absolutely huge task. So what I'll do is I'll take myself through this process where I'll journal around my problem, and without going into too much depth, it's quite a deep process. And what I'll do is I'll identify what it is that within me of the resistance to that problem. And usually you'll find that there's resistance to that problem because there's something inside you that doesn't resonate with the problem and wants to go down a different path. And you'll find that it's highlighting something within you that's incongruent. So, for example, with my car, when I journaled around that, I'm trying to find what happened because it was about 2 months ago. What I found was I actually would prefer a van. I actually would prefer a camper van, and I'd actually prefer to be going on journeys around Europe in my camper van. But right now I've got a Mini Cooper, and I love that Mini Cooper. It's served me well for many years. I've absolutely adored that Mini Cooper, but it doesn't fit with my lifestyle anymore. And so I didn't want to tackle these huge tasks to go with the Mini Cooper. Here's the good news, here's the great news. I did tackle the tasks. I did go through the whole process, and still am actually. And what that led to was my partner and I talking about going on mini adventures and putting a tent box on the top and travelling around Europe in the Mini Cooper once I'd got it to a state that it could. And also eventually we will turn it into a van. We'll swap it out for a van. So there's always a desire. There's always something that's calling. That's what I want to say as well. Is sometimes you've got to go digging for it, but I also want to say that that's being human. I personally don't know anybody who doesn't have desires or things that they want, whether them be materialistic, whether it's emotional, whatever it is. Nearly every day I have a conversation with somebody who's talking about something that they don't want or something that they do want. So the way I see this is, why not work with it? Why not evolve with it? Why not listen to it? Why not follow it? It's there for a reason. It's calling you, and it's there. Why settle for your life the way it is? And so here's the interesting thing. Why do we settle for the life the way it is if we're not happy? Well, one of the most common things that I've come across, and it certainly was me, it's termed as the golden cage, that you've grown this life, you've enjoyed it, you've worked hard for it, and then you find yourself in some kind of circumstance where it feels like a prison. First of all, you're thinking, I shouldn't be unhappy. I can't really talk to anybody about this. Look at all these things that I've got. Or you've got commitments and you don't know how to get out of them. So the easiest thing to do is to settle, isn't it? That's the easiest thing to do. But then is that championing your future self? Is that what's going to happen? Either your life's going to fall apart anyway because you're unhappy, or you're just going to live in this unhappy life. Why settle for it? Why not champion your future self? And mostly the reason that we don't do that is fear. So if you boil everything down, you've either got love or fear as a choice. Honestly to God, you could argue with me, but actually if you sit for long enough and look at this, Everything has an underlying energy of love or fear. And the reason that you wouldn't pursue what your heart's calling you to do is because you're afraid. And of course you're afraid. If you weren't afraid, you'd already have what you want. And that'll be the next video I'll do. The next video I'll do next week will be what happens when you go for what you want. Well, you have to face all the fears of why you haven't got it. But let me tell you, it's worth facing those fears. It's worth it. You will come out so evolved at the other side. And to give you some context, I'll talk about something that happened with me along my journey. I found myself last year living in an Airbnb in Glastonbury. I really liked it there. I was actually living in the cabin at the end of the garden, and I loved it, and my journey had took me there. I'd come to Glastonbury mainly for my daughter. She was a single mum for a while. By this point she had a partner, but she needed help, and it had been quite the journey, and I wanted to spend time with my grandson. But I'd found myself living in an Airbnb, and I was taking my business to the next level, but every day something was diverting me, something was happening, there was a distraction, there was something going on. But because I'm doing this work, I'm constantly doing my journaling practices in the morning that I do, different things. So I was constantly looking at myself to see what's happening here. And then one day I walked into the main building and there was something happening, and it was another drama. And I just looked around and I thought, I'm addicted to drama. And I felt some shame. And I went back down to where I was staying and I journaled around it. And I really saw that I was addicted to drama. Now, just to backtrack a little bit, this is what happens when you want to evolve your life. I was looking to evolve my life at that time to where it is now, funnily enough. And I saw that that wasn't going to happen if I was addicted to drama. Now, usually when you do get to see these things, it brings up fear, and it can bring up shame, it can bring up all sorts. Well, for me at that point, that was shame. And I then went to work on that, and it was a habit, and it took me from March right through to, I'd say, November to unpick that habit, to work on my internal environment and to not be addicted to drama. There were so many angles to it, and I got there because I have practices that I've developed to get me there, and then my life just escalated from there, and I ended up actualizing some desires that I'd had for quite a long time. So this is what I mean. When you follow those desires, you will be presented with situations, problems, or awareness, self-awareness that you will move through in order for you to be the person that have got those desires, which equals fulfillment. And as I've said already, evolution. That's what happens. And for me, what I've found out is that it's very, very fulfilling. It's a way of life that still feel fear, still come face to face with things always, but I love my life. I enjoy life. Every day brings something new. I'm 57 next month and I just want to live. And that's very, very different to the way I felt back then. That day when the state came in, I'd lived a really good life. I was very fortunate in that I'd already followed a lot of my dreams. It's just that they'd expired and I'd changed beyond what I'd built. And why did they expire? Well, I had worked a lot on my internal environment and I changed. And it may be that you are into self-development. It may be that you've been changing and evolving and looking at yourself. Maybe you've started to love yourself more, or whatever it is. But maybe your life has expired beyond what you are internally, and it's time for you to take a few steps forward and follow your desires. So with all that being said, I am in the next stage of evolution of my business. I'm building these practices. If it's something that would interest you, then comment or message me and I'll develop them further. I'm not saying I'm going to be able to give them to you straight away. I'm also writing a book about my life and what happened. And right now I'm doing something that I'm afraid of. I'm evolving. I don't normally talk about this stuff at the end of my videos. So you can see I'm getting all fidgety and I'm having to face something that I find difficult. That's because I'm moving to the next level of my desires, the thing that's calling me, which is to be more public, to talk about this stuff, to talk about what I've been using and developing for the last 5 years, 6 years. So yes, I also work with clients one-on-one. It is really exclusive. I tend to find that the people that I work with don't want to openly talk about what they're going through. They would prefer to work with me privately and exclusively. And if you want to do that, then just get in touch with me as well. I don't take on more than 6 clients at a time because I like to be present with each client. Going through a life change requires much, much, much presence. So that's this week. Next week I'll talk about what happens when you do follow your desires and how to face what comes up